Start. Good morning, everyone. My name is Wendy Custer. I'm the Vice President here at the Chamber of Commerce. I'm going to take a moment to thank our sponsors, Univest Financial and Merck Sharp and Doane Federal Credit Union. And we're going to start our sessions with Joslyn and Jennifer of Entrust Financial, and they are presenting Your Relationship with Money, Tips for Transformation. Ladies, all yours.
Thank you, Wendy. Welcome, everybody. Your relationships to money. I'm Joslyn Ewart. There may be no better topic than money for today's conference, Power Your Potential. That's because money is a powerful tool, a tool that can serve our families, our values, and ourselves. In fact, this recognition that money is a powerful tool inspired me to found my firm, Entrust Financial, in 2000. We provide investment management supported by holistic wealth planning, as we aim to help clients achieve all that is important to them. As business owners, we have a special expertise in helping other entrepreneurs. Because women often lack the confidence they need to take steps to transform their financial lives, a few years ago, I wrote and published Balancing Act, Wealth Management Straight Talk for Women. The basic concepts that we need to understand so we can put our money to work for us are delineated in the book through storytelling. In fact, 15 years of stories gathered from working with clients. I can't wait to get started, but first, let me hand off the program to my colleague and Entrust shareholder, Jennifer Bravo, so she can introduce herself. Jennifer?
Good morning, everyone. We're thrilled to be here. I'm Jennifer Bravo, investment advisor and shareholder at Entrust. My background is in investment banking, and that's where I actually took an interest in what I specialize in now, which is impact investing. So that is, sometimes you'll hear it called socially responsible investing, sustainable investing, but the bottom line, whatever you call it, is that it is investing in a way that aims to further progress for people and the planet. So now working with individuals, I get to do that on a daily basis, which is wonderful. Hand this back to Joslyn, and we are going to get started.
We're hoping to have an interactive session this morning, so please, as the presentation unfolds, add your thoughts and questions to the chat for further conversation. To kick off your relationships to money, let's begin with a little warm-up activity. The foundation for today's conversation is that when it comes to your relationships to money, whether on the personal or the business side, it all starts with you. Therefore, please consider the following and feel free to jot down your answers for further reflection. And also feel free to add any of your comments to the chat. 1, what is the first positive word or thought that comes to mind when you hear the word money? What is the first positive word or thought that comes to your mind with the word money? 2, what is the first negative word or thought that comes to your mind when you hear the word money? A negative word that comes to mind when you hear or think the word money. And 3, how would you answer this? When it comes to my money, I wish more than anything. When it comes to my money, I wish more than anything.
Right, we have lots of answers coming in the chat. That's fantastic. Thank you.
Yes, it is.
Joslyn and I were speaking this morning, and it's so hard in these breakout sessions when you're virtual, you really don't know what the feedback is or how engaged anyone's going to be. So thank you for that. It always makes these sessions more valuable for everyone.
This is a great start.
Yes. Okay. So I'm just going to pull out a few that I'm seeing. These are streaming in. I'm going to do my best to kind of capture the broad themes, which is great. So on the positive side, we're seeing lots about independence, safety, freedom, choices. There's kind of a theme here you see emerging. On the negative side, again, a couple themes: debt, scarcity, obsession, greed, problem. Debt is the number one answer, and probably the number one stressor that we hear from clients as well. So you're all right in line with what we find to be true. And then I'm getting into, I wish more than anything, I want to be comfortable and stable. I wish my money would work for me. Similar increasing returns on my investments. I wish I had planned earlier. That's an interesting one. I appreciate that. I don't want it to limit me. No worry, less stress. Okay. You don't want to worry about it. That's human nature. I think that's common. That's wonderful. Thank you all so much for sharing that. These are really great. I'm just checking to see if I've missed any major theme here, but I think
I really love all the values oriented, which is going to come up in a few minutes. You know, the idea that you want a sense of freedom, that you want independence, that you want choices, that you recognize that having your money working for you in a productive way gives you a sense of safety and security, and makes it possible for you not to stress, for you not to worry. And in fact, even the comments about debt, I suspect that, you know, part of the intent of our framework that we're going to talk about in the next few minutes is so that if you put this framework to work in your own financial lives, you really won't have to worry about the debt. I mean, there are times when having a little bit of leverage is actually a positive thing, but if it creates worry, maybe it's an outsized proportion of your financial picture. So these answers are fantastic. And I would say that from these responses, even though we don't get to meet you participants who are joining us today, you really are focused in the right direction and in the right arenas to make use of what we're going to talk about and to have this help propel you forward in the way that you would like to go. So this is fantastic. Our goal is to help you transform your experience of money and tailor your financial life to reflect what is most important to you, which is these comments that we're seeing in the chat, which is fantastic. And to do this, I've mentioned already the word framework. It's important when it comes to money because it's so dynamic to have a framework that you can control, that you're in charge of, but that is flexible because life has a lot of transitions. And it's very deliberate. At Entrust Financial, we have advisors of 3 different generations. And that's because in every generation of life, there are different priorities, there are different needs, there are different ways to deploy your financial resources so that indeed you can feel on track. And you do know that you are optimizing what you're doing with your money to achieve your short and longer term goals. So you need a plan, a financial framework that is flexible. And ultimately, if you know you have a sense of control and you know you have that flexibility built in, now you're positioned to feel a sense of confidence in the decisions you make. You might not know exactly when your investments are going to build to that level of appreciation or return that you're aiming for, but you know you're on track. You know that if you keep moving on that pathway, on that roadmap that you've prepared for yourself, that you can have the confidence you need so that your money, whether it's on the personal side or the business side, is accomplishing what you're hoping for. So with this in mind, I'm going to hand off to Jennifer to see what we need to do to have that control, flexibility, and confidence going forward. Jen?
Yes. So I hope that sounds appealing. Our framework really falls into three different themes that I'm going to talk about: save, spend, and share. We're going to start with save. And the save theme is really all about your relationship with yourself and your values. What's important to you about money? You answered that. It's not how we asked it, but in the chat, that is really what you were answering. What's important to you about money? And the act of saving truly is a form of self-care. It's taking care of our future selves. And when we save today, we're caring for our needs down the road. So one of the most common and most accessible tools for long-term savings is the 401k or company-sponsored retirement plan. Taking advantage of a 401k, if it is available to you, is a great place to start transforming your relationship with money, and it fits perfectly within the characteristics that Joslyn just mentioned. So you are in total control of the plan, how much you contribute, how that money is invested. It is flexible. You can change it as needed as your circumstances change. And it can help build your confidence as you gain familiarity and take advantage of the tools that many plans offer for education. So if you're an employee, this may be just already set up and available to you. If you are a business owner, you have the ability to not only set up a plan for yourself, for your own savings, but to share that opportunity with your employees as well, to empower them, to give them the tool, this one tool to get started. And all different platforms have different opportunities for education, but most, and I will say all of the reputable and recommended platforms have so many tools for employee education to help build that confidence. It's a really great place that's kind of all in one to just get started. And these tools, it is, for most, it is just a ready to go option, and it's a great place to start building that momentum. I know Joslyn is a big believer in this we both are from the business side, but Joslyn has a personal connection as well to how this can get started. So I'll let her tell her story.
Before I dive into my story, I would like to say, with respect to 401k saving, especially in light of some of the comments in the chat, no matter what you're contributing now to your 401k, the best way to increase that amount, I think somebody mentioned they wish they had started sooner. The thing that we see most commonly with respect to 401k contributions of our clients when we first meet them is they're not maxing out their plan. So an easy way to do this is, and I'm just making a scenario up here. Let's say you're contributing $250 a pay. Well, these days, assuming you get paid 26 times a year, you can contribute a lot more than that. So if you're doing $250 a pay now, just put yourself on a schedule and say every 6 months, you're going to up it by $50. So if you're at $250 now, say after this presentation, I'm going to start contributing $300 a pay. And then next year, beginning of year, I'm going to up that $300 a pay to $350 a pay, or perhaps the next time that you're going to get a raise. But literally put yourself on a schedule, regardless if you are in that enviable position of having an employer who also contributes for you. That's wonderful. And you want to make sure you're contributing enough so that you're getting the full match and not leaving that free money on the table. But on your side, please get yourself incrementally up to the maximum amount. If you do it incrementally, you'll never miss that extra cup or two of Starbucks a week that it costs you to up it by $50 a month. And down the road, I guarantee that you're going to be pleased with the results. And Jen mentioned my story. I knew when I started working in my first career, I was a music teacher for the school district of Philadelphia for 20 years. And I knew that even though everybody, just said the pension was wonderful, I did the math as a 21-year-old new teacher of how much money I would get if I retired after 35 years. And I wasn't really earning much of a living wage at the age of 21. And even doing the math with increases after I hung around for a while, I realized that was not going to be enough money 35 years down the road when I was only in my mid 50s. My mother's 97. I mean, that's a lot of years of retirement. So in any case, I decided that my number one priority was I had to contribute as a teacher, it wasn't a 401k, it was a 403b. And I contributed a high proportion of my income. But again, I didn't do it because I fully understood what I was doing, other than I don't want to be poor down the road. I know as a teacher, I don't make a high income, but when I retire, I don't want to be limited. I don't want to be worrying about money. I don't want to feel like I have no choice now that I'm looking at 30 years of retirement after a full teaching career. So I basically led with savings. I saved first, and then whatever I had left, that's what I used. Well, little did I know when I started to do that at the age of, I didn't start when I was 21, but within 2 years of teaching. So I guess when I was 23, I started saving. Little did I know that I would leave teaching in my early 40s, and then lo and behold, start a business. Well, I didn't have to worry. I didn't have enough money to retire that young, that's for sure. But I knew I had that base that even if it was a while before I could contribute again to my wonderful 403b, I could leave, I could start a new career, I could start a business, and I would be okay down the road when that, all important retirement day decided to roll around. So I cannot overemphasize the flexibility, the choice, the freedom, the lack of limitation that's built in when you say to yourself, where do I want to be in 10 or 20 years? How much money do I need in 10 or 20 years so that I have a chance of getting there? And then save, just save, and incremental is fine. It really doesn't matter how old you are. It really doesn't matter where you are today. It's look at today, think about what you want tomorrow, and then start navigating yourself in that direction. That's what it takes. Jen?
Yeah, that is such a great example of starting young. And I love how you mentioned, I didn't exactly know what I was doing, right? I just knew I needed to save money. And I think a lot of us get caught up. I'm guilty of this in my personal life and other arenas. If we don't have all the answers and we can't do things exactly in the ideal way, a lot of us get kind of stuck. But the answer really is to just start, and then you incrementally improve it and you work towards that ultimate goal. And that is the number one thing. Time is something we cannot buy back. So today is the best day that you have available to get started. Okay, so that was our save theme. Now we're going to shift gears. We're going to move into spend. And perhaps this theme comes up for you in your relationship with a spouse or potentially a business partner. While the save theme is all about our future resources, spend really focuses on our resources today. We can again come back to that question, what is important to you about money? When we think about spending, we often let our minds drift to thoughts of a budget. Budgets are no doubt important, but can sometimes trick us into thinking a little too much about the what of our spending and not enough on the how. And we're not here today to tell you how to write a budget. How we spend our money says so much about our priorities and our values. Do you spend on your needs before your wants? Do you pay yourself before you pay your bills? Are you a bargain hunter, or do you prefer the cachet of a pricier brand? All of these things come up often between partners of any kind. Understanding your money personality and that of your partner can be a great starting point to finding a balance and comfort for everyone involved, right? It's always about balance, as with any other aspect of your relationship with another person. It's about compromise. It's finding that middle ground that sort of makes everyone happy and lets everyone sleep at night in the case of your money. We're going to put the link to our money personality quiz in the chat before the end of the session. And I would highly encourage you to take it and share it with your financial partner or financial partners. You may be surprised at the results. Once you have a better understanding of your money personality, creating a spending plan that you can stick to is much easier. You are in control of it, coming back to our framework. It should be flexible enough to account for the dynamic nature of our lives. And best of all, knowing your plan is aligned with your values about money is going to fill you with confidence. It makes it so much easier to stick to day in and day out, to know that, okay, my spending is aligned with those things that I said were important to me. you know, what our other partner that Joslyn mentioned, Mackenzie, she tells a great story about this. And when she was first married, she said, my new husband and I just kind of defaulted into the way our parents had done it. He took care of the bills and the finances, and I didn't, even though this was my career. That was just the traditional way of doing things. And we didn't really even think about it. We just sort of fell into that pattern. Well, it kept causing all of this stress for them and friction in their relationship. And eventually down the road, they ended up taking the money personality quiz. And she said, lo and behold, my husband is a worrier. He is just worried all the time. He can see the numbers. He can see we have enough to pay our bills, but he's just worried about it. And this caused him so much stress that it was causing friction in the relationship. So just by virtue of understanding their personalities a little bit better, they were to make the simple tweak. They were able to make the simple tweak that she's going to pay the bills. She's the one looking at the accounts and is going to pay the bills. He's not stressed. She's not frustrated. And we can all move forward with our goals. I had a similar thing in my own marriage, that we just needed to understand each other. I didn't know, especially starting out, I didn't know how my husband, reacted to and thought about money. And once I got that, our conversations got so much easier because we were coming from a place of commonality and understanding. So that's just one example. But again, we're not here to talk to you about budgets. There are a myriad of ways to create a budget. Whichever one works for you is the best one, I'll be honest. However, whether it's a spreadsheet or a piece of paper or an app, the method really doesn't matter. It's the fact that you have a plan that you feel confident in and that you can stick to.
Well, and I think to that point, Jen, too, it's really important, since money can be such a hot button in relationships, all kinds of relationships. I think it's really important to have set times when you and your spouse, your partner, whoever you manage your money with, if you're managing your money on your own, even have a conversation with yourself, but have regular times where you sit down, you kind of look at, what are your high level goals? Where are you going? What is that roadmap? What are you trying to achieve in that 5 and 10 year or longer period that I had mentioned earlier? And that you really take the time to look at it. Please don't ever assume that everything is on track because you've got things floating around your mind. I feel like, with accounts, we can't even see statements anymore unless we log on. Having your financial plan in your head, I can almost guarantee you will not achieve your goals. I can't guarantee that. There might be a few of us out there who are objective enough that we can have our financial plan in our head and really know how we're deploying our resources and how all of our accounts are invested. I haven't met that person yet. I have to look at things written down. It doesn't have to be paper and pencil. It can be on the computer, but I have to look at where I am, where I'm going, do a check-in. And it's really important, if you have a financial partner or spouse, that you're doing this together on some sort of regular basis, not so that you can do finger pointing and you spend too much and I spend too much and oh my God, the credit card's even higher now. Not that kind of conversation. But it's really important to have those regular times, not for criticism and arguing, but simply to say, okay, this is where we are. This is the money that got spent. If we're not on track, where did we veer off? What can we do to get back on track? And when it comes to spending, a number of people in the chat talked about debt. If you have debt, it's really important when you sit down and figure out how to allocate your money to come up with a plan, lead with savings. How much do we need to save to get to those long-term goals? And if you really need to save $500 a month and you've got a lot of debt and you can't get it up to 500 yet, don't put off the savings. Whatever you do, do not put off the savings. Save at least $100 a month. If you don't start saving, you won't start saving. You must save and set that mindset that I am living today, but I'm preparing for tomorrow. Kind of that self-care that Jen had mentioned earlier. So always lead with some sort of savings, but then take a look at your debt and figure out, again, a schedule, a plan, an intentional plan. All right, and I'm just making numbers up. We have $10,000 of credit card debt. We've been kind of paying the minimums. what can you do so that you make a game plan so within a 2-year period or less, you have knocked out that $10,000. And on that debt side too, the other thing I've seen people bump into that really exacerbates their debt totally accidentally is they've got too many credit cards. Now, again, I'm not going to belabor this. We don't know your particular situations, but if somebody has multiple credit cards, it's infinitely easier to have a lot of debt. I can remember it was the early 1980s, and I think I got my first credit card or whatever, and I kind of liked that. That made me feel grown up or something, who knows? But in any case, I had one, and then all of a sudden I had 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, and I said to myself, even though I never made interest payments, it was a real stretch. And I realized I was not really deploying my income, small as it was, the way I wanted to. So I just shed the credit cards. I mean, I think for most couples, 1 or 2 credit cards are probably going to do the deed. If you've never had a problem with debt and you've got 10 credit cards and that works for you, fine. If you've ever had a problem with debt, likely the fewer credit cards, the easier it will be for you to know what you really spent. It's, I think, extremely hard today to know what we spent when it's either plastic or, Apple Pay or whatever. It's like, whoa, there's so many different sources for tracking what's really going out. I just think that the fewer sources of outflow, the easier it is to manage. And in terms of leading with your savings, it's very, very interesting. I don't know if we have any business owners on the call, but some number of years ago, my business partner, Mackenzie, and I looked at each other and said, we really don't know what the shares of our firm are worth. We hadn't really stopped to think about that component, even though we were an LLC, which meant that we had shares in the firm. And we realized that when we looked at this idea of spending the revenue that came in, we kind of had this idea in our minds that the revenue comes in, you spend a portion, you distribute the rest of it to the 2 owners. And by doing that, the shares of the firm really didn't have a value. So how could we bring in another shareholder? Like now Jen is a shareholder. So we needed to get religion, and we worked with a consultant. And the very interesting part is that the result of working with the consultant on the business side and deploying that revenue wasn't too unlike deploying household income. In other words, as revenue comes in, 1/3 of it is set aside to be deemed the profit of the business. 1/3 of it is set aside for those all-important fixed expenses, and 1/3 of it is set aside for the owner's salaries. So again, just like the money comes into your household, you set aside a healthy portion for savings, short-term savings for repairing the roof, heavy maintenance, whatever might come up, the new car, and then a portion of that savings for your future to make sure your life tomorrow is even better, hopefully, than today. And then the fixed expenses, which is all part of that household budget. And then what's left over, that's your discretionary expenses. So it's very, very interesting. As you can hear, these concepts are not complicated, but it's a question of sitting down, doing the numbers, writing it down, and most importantly, having the confidence to have the intention to really implement. And it's that implementation that makes all the difference in terms of your spending plan. Jen?
It really does. Those are some great points. And we have some good points and questions coming in the chat. So I'm just going to pause to address a couple of those. One question that is just so common, we get asked all the time, do you recommend merging finances in a marriage or relationship? The answer to that is, as everything, it depends, right? But the important thing about it and how we'll counsel, couples about to get married or thinking they never merged and they were thinking about doing it would be, it's really important, it's most important that you have a conversation about your goals and your values. So the personality quiz is a great kind of low pressure way to start that. It's important that you merge those, right? And you figure out what's important to us as a unit, Where are we trying to go? What are our goals? How you get there logistically doesn't matter quite so much. That's really a personality thing. Some people really prefer to have just everything combined and we can see everything and it's all visible and transparent. Others, and for all sorts of reasons, me included, like a little independence, right? And they've been used to being independent for a long time, perhaps, and want to preserve some of that. So maybe a combination of things is the best solution, that you have some shared accounts and resources, but you both maintain, kind of your own thing on the side, but you have an understanding about what that is and what it's for. It really just depends on the two of you. If debt and spending are a problem with one or both partners, combining things gets a little bit sticky in terms of liability, but it's ultra important that both partners have some visibility into what the other is doing. So really, it's not so much about combining finances as it is about coming together and combining your goals and your values. That's the important thing. How you do it doesn't so much matter. It's really just that you are transparent with each other and you are aligned. You're both on the same page about how you manage things.
I'd like to add a footnote to Jen's point there. What she's saying is the mechanics of how you commingle is not, there's not one right answer, but the fact that you are fully transparent is huge. And I have done a lot of divorce planning work, and divorce is common in our society, so I think it's worth mentioning a couple of things. First of all, one of the things that I think I always remain surprised at, even though I saw it so many times, is that following a divorce, a woman would get in a new relationship, the relationship would get serious, she might even get married again, and she had no idea what the new husband's resources were. She didn't know what accounts he had, she didn't know what his economic wherewithal was. It was just kind of assumed that since he was a guy and maybe at midlife by now, that he had money and he was on solid ground. And I will tell you that more than 9 times out of 10, once the truth was known, she had more money than he did. But he, even though he had not saved and basically had done very little preparation, again, I've seen it time and again. I'm still kind of surprised by what I've seen, but I have seen it, so I have to share it with you. 9 times out of 10, then he posed as the financial expert and he was going to now manage her money. And she was the one who had prepared and saved and whatever. So that transparency, we just cannot overemphasize the need. And it should be a positive. It shouldn't be a negative. And also, if it's coming up to a second relationship, and this is a way to achieve the transparency without, I don't know, in some cases it might be an easier way, I don't know. But I think it's very important to have a prenup so that as you come together as a couple, if you have a prenup agreement that says, this is mine and this is yours, or this is mine and this is yours, but after we marry, it will be ours, or however you can structure a prenup however you want, but it's an opportunity to get all the cards on the table, to know really what your prospective spouse has or owns, and how much debt does your prospective spouse have. Like I mentioned earlier, people have things in their head, and what they spout out of their head may or may not be anywhere close to the truth. So when you do a prenup with a qualified attorney, all of the true documentation is out on the table. It should be a very friendly conversation. It's just making sure that moving forward, money's not going to be an obstacle in your relationship. And if you try to do a prenup and you discover that a prospective life partner is, very hostile or whatever, that's another opportunity to learn before the knot is tied. I don't think anybody can have a positive financial relationship if there's hostility with one of the partners. And you can't change somebody who chooses those kinds of negative attitudes. If that's who they are, or they're a gambler. I came across a situation, not in a divorce, it was a referral, and lo and behold, he, who had a lot of technical understanding of the world of investments, was busy dissipating during an up market cycle of 3 years. His wife's several $1,000,000 that she inherited from her parents. And their idea was, oh, we'll sit down with Joslyn and magically this problem will go away. Well, no, because he's a gambler. And she permitted him to take charge of her inherited money and basically gamble away $3 million when they should have had about 6 by then, just with normal garden variety, medium risk investing. So, it's better as a protection for you and a security for you to kind of know who your partner is financially. And it's interesting to me that often people who have strong faith, often churches or other religious institutions don't necessarily teach couples to pay attention to the finances, kind of as though they'll sort of take care of themselves. And one of the things we see is they often don't. So it's an opportunity with a new relationship to really make sure that you know what your prospective spouse's relationship is to their own money before you come together, and then kind of make that game plan about your future financial life so that you don't have a lot of, really true unpleasant surprises that might be hard to work around after you've already made that commitment. I have to say, to have to comment on the chat, I love the comments I'm seeing. People have suggested how they handle the 401k, increase until they get to the max. Thank you so much for sharing these things. That works so well. And somebody who's mentioning, Heather, who's mentioning that they use one credit card and they, there's an emergency use for a credit card. It's not for everyday use, and that really manages their spending. I have clients who have very strong net worth, and the way they handle credit cards is they only permit themselves to have a $5,000 maximum balance. Most of us get these offers from credit cards. They're happy to give us $50,000, $75,000, but this particular couple, even though they can certainly afford to spend more than $5,000 a month, they got a $5,000 ceiling on that credit card, and that keeps them clean and green and on track. So
Yeah.
I think that's a lot about the spending plan. Jen, let's keep moving.
Yes. So not to backtrack too much, but I do want to make sure we don't lose track of a couple questions here.
Yeah, good.
One that just came in: what is the difference between 401k and 403b? The biggest difference and the main difference is who offers it. You can think of a 403b as a 401k for nonprofit institutions, for school districts, municipalities, things like that. So for the user, there's very little difference, if any. You can think of them as synonyms. It just depends who's offering it. And then the other one that came in was about credit cards, and how do you suggest eliminating them wisely related to your credit score? That's another really common question: is I want to work on my debt, I want to have less credit cards, but I don't want to damage my credit score. There's a little bit of strategy involved here. Of course, it always comes down to everyone's unique situation, but the broad advice would be, think about when that credit score is going to matter next. Are you expecting to be shopping for a mortgage or a new car, or if you're a renter in a new rental contract? Are you going to need it soon, right? Because you're going to need to take a little bit of a hit, and it's not that much as people blow it out of the water to be. My very first job in finance was actually doing credit reporting, and it isn't as big of a hit as everyone makes it out to be. Certainly not the credit card companies who want you to keep them open in perpetuity and keep spending. So it's really, how soon am I going to need a credit score pulled for me? And then I would just go in order of priority, right? It's more important that you make a plan to pay down your debt systematically, that is going to work for you, and then close cards once you're done. That's more important than preserving the small difference it's going to make in your credit score when you do go ahead and close it. Of course, it always depends kind of what your setup is, but that's generally the right advice. Is paying it off and closing them is far more valuable to you in the long run than avoiding a small hit to your credit score, which is temporary. Keep that in mind. It is temporary.
And just a footnote to that, often what people do, and again, hypothetically, let's say somebody has 3 outstanding credit cards and one of them has a rather small balance and one of them has a rather large balance. It often helps just to try to get rid of the small balance credit card first, because it gives you a sense of momentum, a sense of accomplishment, and then kind of figure out with the 2 remaining cards, which one is charging you the most interest, and head for the one with the highest interest. And again, just make your plan, make your schedule, and just chip away. And if you chip away, it will get paid down.
Yes, definitely. There's all sorts of Googling you can do about this. The debt snowball is a common tactic. I like it. I mean, it's got a funny name, but I like it. The idea is that, momentum breeds momentum, right? Like a snowball. And so really the right plan is whichever one you're going to stick to. That's the right plan. So, okay, couple other questions, and then we will just finish up our content here. One is, if I'm starting later in life with a 401k, should I stay moderate or go aggressive? That's a good question. And I know, Joe, you chimed in as well. You were also wondering that. This comes down to a few things. The first is your personality. How well can you tolerate risk in your investments? Because if you can't sleep at night, it's not the right mix. It doesn't matter financially what's happening for you. If you're up at night because you're worried about the risk you're taking, it's not the right plan, and we need to be doing something else. And then in terms of, moderate or aggressive, that it depends on where you are. Later in life can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. What's your timeline? Are we talking about 2 years before you want to retire, or 10? There's a big difference. And so that really, I know it's a frustrating answer. It really depends. But you always, regardless of your timeline or when you're starting, you never want to be taking more risk than you have to and then you're comfortable with. The name of the game is to take only as much risk as you have to meet your goals. And regardless, if you wish you had started much sooner and you're trying to play catch up, it's really not a reason to take more risk than is appropriate or what you can handle. It just isn't. And we need to find maybe a different way to help you reach your goals. But taking more risk than you are generally comfortable with is never the right answer. Okay, so I'm going to just move on. I will try to circle back as questions keep coming in. Feel free to keep putting them there, and we'll try to address just as many of them as we can before the end of the session. So we've talked about save, spend, and now we're headed to share, our third and final theme. And the share theme really reflects your relationship with your community. And in this sense, I'm using the term community rather loosely, as that can mean and does mean different things to all of us. Your community might be the town you live in. It might be your closest friends and family. It could be humanity at large. Whatever community means to you, money plays a role in your relationship to it. Charitable contributions are the first thing that come to mind for most of us here, which are wonderful. Donations are a great way to support causes or organizations that you believe in. They have potential tax benefits, which is just an added bonus. And one thing I'll note, involving children in the giving process as a family can be a wonderful way to start discussions with them about finances at a young age. We get asked, how do I teach my kids about money? And involving kids in the giving process, size does not matter, but just showing them that this is something that's important to you, and here's how we talk about it, and we let them help you decide who's going to get some funds on behalf of the family. It's a really great way to introduce some of those basic concepts about identifying their priorities, the fact that you've saved to be able to do this, and really putting your money where your mouth is in terms of your values. So that's a really good way and non-boring way to teach your kids about money. And going back to our criteria, right? Of course, you're in control of how much you give, when you give it, and to whom. It's flexible, can change as frequently as you want or need. And the best thing about this, I think, is that sharing with others has routinely been proven as a fantastic way to build your own confidence in your other choices. It's important to note, too, that money is really just a resource, and it's not the only one that you can share. So sharing your time, your talents through volunteering is another great way to share with and invest in your community. And going back to children, it's a great way to teach them to do it too. A lot of our clients have a strong sense of community for, whether it's a religious organization or causes they care about more broadly. And a lot of them have, spent significant time trying to figure out how that fits into their financial plan. It's not always just writing a check, though sometimes it is, but it's how do I do this in a way that feels good, that resonates with me? How else could I support the causes I care about? One suggestion that I really like is we've had a couple clients say, when it comes time for the holidays, I'd really prefer if you would make a gift in honor of me or in memory of a family member instead of you going to Target and buying me something obligatory, right? I'd rather you spend your money. That would be so meaningful to me. And in that sense, it's a way that you have stayed true to your values. You furthered a cause that you believe in that didn't impact your own personal financial resources to do so. And you've built a little bit of confidence, and never mind all those feel-good emotions that come with helping others that just so many research studies have proven over and over and over. So sharing is, it is an important, a vitally important component, because whether you are a charitable contribution maven, and this is something that you always do on a schedule and it's really important to you, or not, you do have a relationship with your community as it comes to money. And it's not just donations. I know that's what we've focused on here, but it is how do you spend your money, right? Which bleeds into the spend bucket a little bit. But do I like to patronize local businesses of people that I know? Do I like to help them promote their business? All of that comes into sharing your resources of some kind with your community. And again, it's a really great way with children to help introduce some of those basic financial concepts. On a more practical note, as it relates to children, one of our clients specializes in helping teenagers apply for and find the right path for college. And she always touts volunteering, especially initiating volunteering efforts, as a really standout component to a college application. So if you have teens that are getting ready, they're in that phase or in high school, perhaps initiating some kind of community service, whether it's through volunteering time or financially supporting organizations, it has proven to be one of the great ways to sort of invest in their future for their college applications. And we just love that. So there you have it, a framework for thinking about your relationships to money through the lens of 3 different themes: save, spend, and share. And after this session, I really encourage you to think through your relationship to each of these themes, keeping in mind that criteria for success. As it relates to each one, ask yourself, am I in control? Is it flexible? And does it give me confidence? Because the importance of that last point really cannot be overstated. So many women don't have the confidence in their ability to successfully manage their finances, and often they hand that responsibility off to someone else. At the heart of it, it's why Joslyn wrote her book, Balancing Act, to help break that habit of deferring to others in their lives and start taking the control of their money that they deserve to have and are completely capable of wielding. So that is our framework. I'm keeping an eye on the time here. I want to just scroll back through and make sure that we're not missing any big questions in the chat. So let me take a minute.
I'm going to jump in with a couple answers here. It's possible for a teenager who's earning money to contribute to a custodial Roth IRA. So that's one answer. Somebody asked about how much you can contribute to your 401k or 403b. If you're not yet 50, you can contribute $750 per pay, assuming 26 pays a year. If you're over 50, you can contribute $1,000 per pay. And there've been a couple investment questions, and I'm sure you'll understand, unless we're hired, we're not allowed to give any kind of investment advice, but I'm happy to say, also in tandem with somebody mentioning inflation, Anybody who puts all of their money, and this is what I had to tell my mother years ago, in CDs will go broke safely. I can almost guarantee that. That's the only context in which you'll hear me use the word guarantee. The beauty part of the proliferation of mutual funds for those of us who were not born into families of any kind of wealth is that we can participate in the market through our mutual funds, which are what is offered in 401ks, 403bs, and other retirement plans. We have a way to participate in the market with incremental contributions. And the only way to stay ahead of inflation and loss of purchasing power because of inflation is to have an investment that has some exposure to equities. And somebody mentioned the word diversified. As long as the asset allocation has some proportion of bonds in there, and the greater the proportion of bonds, the less ups and downs or market fluctuations or volatility you'll have to put up with. And market fluctuations, volatility, those are both synonyms for the famous four-letter word risk. As long as you have some bonds in that mix to offset the more volatile and fluctuating equity or stock mutual funds that you hold, you're going to give yourself a chance to have a smoother ride over the time. I mean, as you heard at the beginning, I started investing many years ago knowing, and I'm here to tell you, I knew nothing. I was the first person in my family who ever invested a dime. So I had to learn everything the hard way. But without that equity exposure, I would not have been able to be prepared for retirement, to shift careers, all the things that I'm sure people on this call have plenty of things they'd like to do with their money, with that freedom, that comes with knowing you have that base financial foundation from which you can make the choices in your lives. Jen?
Yeah, that's just it's a great way to wrap this up because, you will have heard several times throughout this presentation us say things like, just start, right? Get started, build up. I didn't know anything, but I got started. And that really it's the theme, right? And it's not just with your money. You all know that. You have read articles, you've attended presentations, perhaps conferences, and any kind of goal setting. Make a plan, get started, change it if you have to. I mean, that's really, it's always the name of the game. So I think we've captured most of the questions in the chat. One sort of logistical question, what is the maximum percentage to get taken out of checks for a 401k? Usually there's not a maximum percentage. It's something shy of 100. The limit is set for the year of how much in dollars you can contribute. So under 50 years old, you are allowed to contribute $19,500 for the year. Your company may have other limits on how much can be taken out in terms of percentage, but that would be something to ask your benefits coordinator. And then the other thing to note, we did just put the link in the chat to the money personality quiz. We hope you will use it. It is such a valuable tool. And again, just a really great way for yourself and with a partner to make sure that you're really lining up your plan in a way that speaks to your values and speaks to your personality. And that's going to help you stick with it.
And Jen, as we close out here, would you also add contact us at entrustfinancial.com?
Yes, of course.
I'm sure that everybody who was here today will have questions afterwards and think that they didn't quite get their answer or there's more that they'd like to chat about. Please feel free, contact us at Entrust Financial. We're happy to have a conversation. It doesn't mean you have to hire us or want to have investment management. Believe me, we are here to help you and we look forward to doing so. Thank you so much.
Sorry, everyone. I realize I did put the link in the wrong. I only sent it to our panelists. Here you go. Don't log out just yet. And then here's our contact. Feel free to get to us with questions. Thank you all so much.
Yes, and thank you, Jennifer and Joslyn. You did a great job, great presentation. Made it very easy to understand and really interesting. So we appreciate that very much. I want to invite everyone to join our coffee talk, which is coming up next. There'll be some networking opportunities there. And if anybody missed any of the information that was in the chat, you can certainly reach out to the chamber and we'll be able to get that to you. So thank you very much, ladies. Have a great day.
A pleasure.
Take
You
care.
too. Have a good weekend.
Bye.